He had everything money could buy: a private jet, a penthouse in Manhattan, multi-million-dollar contracts. But when Marcus Hale walked into that simple restaurant in Newark, after 10 years away, he heard something no amount of money in the world could erase: a child's voice repeating the same words he used to say to the woman he walked away from. And in that moment, the billionaire realized some debts aren't paid with money. They're paid with the truth. This is the story of a man who had to choose between the empire he built and the son he never knew he had. Stay until the end, because what happens will change everything. The private jet touched down at Newark International Airport at 7 a.m. on a cold Tuesday morning in November. Marcus Hale stepped off with the same posture as always: shoulders back, an immaculate Italian suit, a Swiss watch gleaming on his left wrist. 3 weeks in Asia closing deals worth millions. 3 weeks away from everything he had built over the last 10 years. And now, finally, back. The driver was already waiting in the arrivals area, holding a discreet sign with his last name. Marcus gave a brief nod and slipped into the black SUV without saying a word. The silence was comfortable. It always had been. He learned early on that too many words complicate business, and life, too. As the car glided down the highway toward Manhattan, Marcus watched the urban landscape he knew so well. Skyscrapers reflecting the weak morning sun, massive billboards advertising ready-made dreams, people rushing along the sidewalks like every second was worth gold. And it was. At least, that's how he'd lived. But something felt different that morning. Maybe it was the accumulated exhaustion from endless meetings. Maybe it was the strange feeling that, even surrounded by success, there was an emptiness no impressive bank balance could fill. Marcus pushed the thought away. This wasn't the time to get philosophical. It was time to get back in control. "Mr. Hale, straight to the office?" The driver's voice broke the silence. Marcus glanced at his watch. It was still early. The meeting with the executives wouldn't start until noon. He could make a stop, take a breath before diving back into the relentless routine. No, stop somewhere for coffee. Something simple, off the usual circuit. The driver hesitated for a moment, as if he wasn't used to requests like that, but simply nodded. 15 minutes later, the SUV pulled up in front of a small corner restaurant in Newark. The sign was faded. Rosie's Diner. Nothing fancy. Nothing Marcus would normally go to. But it was exactly what he wanted in that moment. He went in alone. The smell of fresh coffee and frying bacon hit him immediately. The place felt cozy in a simple way. Formica tables, red vinyl chairs worn by time, an old jukebox in the corner playing country music softly. A few customers scattered around. A man reading the newspaper, an elderly woman sipping tea, 2 construction workers in orange uniforms chatting animatedly. Marcus chose a table by the window and sat down. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could just be. No schedule. No pressure. Just him, a cup of coffee, and that strangely calm morning. That's when he heard it. A child's voice. High-pitched, strained, trying to shape words that were still fighting their way out of a small mouth. Mom, water." Marcus turned his head instinctively. In the opposite corner of the diner, near the counter, a woman was crouched beside a high chair where a little boy, no more than 3, was swinging his legs in the air. She held a colorful plastic cup and repeated with endless patience, "That's it, sweetheart. Water. Say it with me. Water." The boy smiled, showing small, uneven teeth, and tried again. "Water." The woman laughed, a tired laugh, but genuine. She kissed her son's forehead and stood up, adjusting the apron tied around her waist. That's when Marcus really saw her face, and something inside him froze. It couldn't be. It couldn't be her, but it was. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her chin, the way she pulled her curly hair into a full bun. 10 years. It had been 10 years. And there she was, as if time had both stopped and rushed forward at the same time. She hadn't seen him yet. She was busy filling water pitchers, wiping the counter, taking orders. But Marcus knew that when she turned, when their eyes finally met, the past he had locked away so carefully would come rushing back, and that child's voice kept echoing. "Mama, water." Marcus closed his eyes, took a deep breath, but he couldn't bring himself to stand up and leave. Marcus ordered coffee. Black, no sugar. The waitress who came wasn't her. It was an older woman with gray hair and a tired smile who wrote down the order without asking questions. He thanked her quietly. He wasn't ready to talk, not even to himself. The coffee arrived in a white cup with a small chip on the rim. Marcus wrapped both hands around it, feeling the heat seep through the porcelain. His eyes, though, couldn't pull away from the scene in the corner of the diner. Jasmine. The name came back to him like a distant echo. Jasmine Carter, the woman he met on a random night more than 10 years ago, in a Newark bar he'd gone to after a frustrating meeting. She was there with friends, laughing loudly, free, glowing in a way he'd never seen in anyone from his social circle. They talked all night. She was a waitress, went to school at night, dreamed of opening a small business of her own. Marcus was drawn to her simplicity, to the way she saw the world without cynicism, without calculations. For 3 months, they saw each other whenever he managed to escape his unforgiving schedule. Then came the offer. International expansion, the opportunity that would define his career. And he chose. There was no fight, no drama. Just a brief conversation, a vague apology, and the promise of maybe someday. Jasmine didn't cry in front of him. She just nodded, as if she already knew that ending was inevitable. And Marcus left. Now, 10 years later, there she was, still a waitress, still in the same neighborhood, but no longer alone. The boy kept trying to talk. Jasmine went back to him, this time with a small plate of cut fruit. She placed a slice of banana in her son's tiny hand and said, "Tell mommy, banana." The little boy chewed slowly, focused, then tried, "Nah, that's it. Very good." Jasmine clapped, and the boy let out a delighted laugh, proud of himself. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. There was something about that child's voice, something way too familiar. The way he dragged out the syllables, the depth of his tone for someone so small, the stubborn persistence in every attempt. "Banana." The boy finally got it and clapped his hands. Jasmine smiled, her eyes full of tenderness. "You're the smartest boy in the whole world, you know that?" Marcus couldn't stop watching. The scene was so ordinary, so everyday, yet there was something about it that completely disarmed him. Maybe it was the way Jasmine touched her son's face, with a gentleness that contrasted with the visible exhaustion in her slumped shoulders. Maybe it was the child's laugh, free and genuine, echoing through that simple space, or maybe it was the next thing the boy said, "Mommy, I love you very, very much." Marcus almost dropped the cup. Those words. Exactly those words. "I love you very, very much." That was what he used to say to Jasmine. Always. Not just, "I love you." Not even, "I love you very much." It was very, very. A silly, almost childish habit that started between them and became their signature goodbye. Coincidence. It had to be, but the boy's voice kept echoing, and the more Marcus listened, the harder it became to deny the obvious. Jasmine kissed her son's forehead and walked away to help another customer. That's when she turned, and for the first time since Marcus had walked into the diner, their eyes met. She stopped. The tray in her hands trembled slightly. The expression on her face changed in a split second. Surprise, then recognition, then something Marcus couldn't quite read. Anger? Fear? Sadness? Jasmine looked away quickly, like she'd seen a ghost she'd rather forget. She headed toward the kitchen, fast, almost running. But Marcus already knew. He knew by the way she reacted. He knew by that child's voice. He knew because, deep down, a part of him had always known. That boy wasn't just Jasmine's son. He was his too. Jasmine disappeared into the kitchen for almost 10 minutes. Marcus stayed seated, the coffee growing cold in the untouched cup. He tried to organize his thoughts, but everything felt like a whirlwind. Unanswered questions piled up. Why had she never told him? Why hadn't she reached out? Had she tried, and he never knew? Or had she simply decided he didn't deserve to know? The boy stayed in the high chair, now playing with small wooden blocks Jasmine had left for him. He stacked them, one on top of the other with absolute concentration, his tongue sticking out in effort. When the tower fell, he laughed and started again. Persistent, determined, exactly how Marcus had always been. The kitchen door opened. Jasmine came out carrying a tray of steaming plates. She delivered orders to other tables, professional, polite, but Marcus noticed she avoided looking in his direction. Every movement was calculated to keep her distance. But he wasn't going to let it end that way. When Jasmine finally passed by his table to pick up the empty cup, Marcus spoke, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. Jasmine. She froze. She didn't turn around, didn't answer. She just stood there, her back to him, gripping the tray so tightly her fingers turned white. I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about, she replied, her voice low, controlled. Do you want more coffee, or are you leaving? The coldness of her words cut deeper than Marcus expected. He swallowed hard. Jasmine, I saw the boy. I heard him talk. You didn't see anything. She spun around sharply, her brown eyes now locked onto his, hard as stone. You had your coffee. You can leave now. Marcus stood up, lowering his voice so no one else would hear. How old is he? Jasmine didn't answer. How old is he, Jasmine? 3, she said through clenched teeth. 3.5. The math lined up perfectly. Marcus felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Why didn't you ever tell me? Jasmine let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Tell you? For what, Marcus? So you could offer me money, hand me a check and walk away with a clean conscience? Or pretend you care for 5 minutes before going back to your perfect life? I had a right to know. A right? Her voice rose slightly, drawing a few glances from nearby tables. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. You had a chance to stay. I gave you that chance. But you chose to leave. And I chose not to trap you with something you clearly didn't want. You don't know what I wanted. I know exactly what you wanted, Marcus. Success, money, power, and you got it all, didn't you? Congratulations, she pointed toward the high chair. Meanwhile, I raised my son alone. I worked 3 jobs while I was pregnant. I woke up in the middle of the night to nurse him and still showed up for the 6 a.m. shift. I learned how to change diapers, how to get him to sleep, how to teach him every single word that comes out of his mouth, alone. So don't come in here talking to me about rights. Marcus stayed silent. Every word hit like a slap. Does he know about me? He knows he has a mother who would do anything for him. That's all he needs to know. Jasmine, No. She raised her hand, cutting him off. You have no idea what it's like to live like this, to count every dollar, to choose between paying rent or buying medicine when he gets sick, to see other kids with present fathers and have to explain why his never shows up. You have no idea. So don't stand here in your expensive clothes and designer watch telling me you had a right to anything. She took a step back, her eyes glassy, but not a single tear fell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do, and you have a life to get back to. Jasmine turned her back and went to her son. She picked the boy up, kissed his forehead, and carried him toward the back of the diner, away from Marcus. And he stood there, in the middle of Rosie's diner, surrounded by the clatter of dishes and other people's conversations, feeling, for the first time in 10 years, the real weight of his choices. Marcus walked out without paying the bill. Minutes later he came back, left a $50 bill on the table, and walked out again. The older waitress watched him with curiosity but said nothing. He got into the SUV and told the driver to wait. He sat there, sunk into the leather seat, staring out through the dark-tinted window. He could see inside Rosie's diner. He saw Jasmine serving tables, smiling politely at customers, professional as always. But he knew that smile. It was the same one she used when she wanted to hide the pain. "Mr. Hale, are you okay?" the driver asked, concerned. "Yes. Just wait." Marcus didn't know what he was doing there. He didn't know what he expected to accomplish by staying, but he couldn't leave. Not yet. Half an hour later, Jasmine came out through the back door of the diner, her son on her hip. The boy rested his head on her shoulder, almost asleep, his thumb in his mouth. She walked over to an old car, a silver Honda Civic with dents along the sides and a faded sticker on the rear bumper. Marcus watched as she settled the boy into the car seat in the back. The little boy murmured sleepily, and she kissed his forehead before closing the door carefully. That's when Marcus stepped out of the SUV. Jasmine. She turned, startled. When she saw him there on the sidewalk, her expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "What do you want, Marcus? Wasn't this enough?" "I just want to talk." "We already talked." "No, you talked. I listened. Now let me talk too." Jasmine crossed her arms, leaning against the car. "You have 2 minutes. I'm exhausted and my son needs to sleep." Marcus took a deep breath. "You're right, about everything. I left. I chose my career. I wasn't there when you needed me. And I'm sorry. Truly. Sorry doesn't pay the bills, Marcus. I know. But I need you to understand that if I had known, if you had told me, would you have stayed? Jasmine cut in, her voice sharp. Honestly, would you have dropped everything to be a father? Or would you have given me money and gone right back to your life? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, then stopped, because he didn't know, and that was the hardest truth of all. I don't know, he admitted quietly, but I deserved the chance to choose, and I deserved the chance not to be abandoned twice, Jasmine replied, her eyes shining. Because I already knew what your choice would be, Marcus. I knew you, and I wasn't going to let my son grow up feeling like he wasn't enough to make his own father stay. She turned to open the car door, but Marcus stepped forward. What's his name? Jasmine hesitated. For a long moment she stayed silent, her hand on the handle, deciding whether to answer or not. Elijah, she said finally. Elijah Carter. Carter, Marcus repeated. Not Hale. He has my last name, my blood, my struggle. He doesn't need to carry yours. Marcus looked at the car. He could see Elijah's reflection in the rear window, his little head tilted, fast asleep. Can I see him? Up close? Jasmine closed her eyes, exhausted. Marcus, just 1 minute, please. She sighed, defeated, and opened the back door. Marcus stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching something sacred. Elijah slept with his thumb still in his mouth, long lashes casting delicate shadows on his round cheeks. He had Jasmine's light brown skin, her soft curls. But the shape of his face, the straight nose, the brow line, they were his. Something broke open in Marcus's chest, an emotion he didn't have a name for. It was pain, regret, fear, and love, all at once, violent and overwhelming. He's perfect, Marcus whispered. I know, Jasmine said, her voice breaking for the first time. And he's mine, only mine. Marcus stepped back, respecting her space. Jasmine, I want to be part of his life. Why? Guilt? Obligation? Because he's my son. Marcus's voice came out firm, certain, and I already wasted 3 years. I don't want to waste any more. Jasmine stared at him, searching for signs of lies, of manipulation, but all she saw was a man shattered by the truth. That's not how it works, Marcus. You can't just show up and, I know, and I'm not asking you to trust me right now, but give me a chance to prove it. Let me show you I can be different. Jasmine closed the car door and looked up at the Newark night sky, fighting back tears. I need to think. That's fine. I'll wait. She got into the car without another word. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, watching the Civic drive away, taking with it the son he never even knew he had. Marcus didn't go to the office that day. He canceled all his meetings, ignored his assistant's insistent calls, and spent hours locked inside his Manhattan penthouse, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Down below, the city buzzed. Yellow taxis fought for space. Pedestrians rushed across crosswalks. Bike couriers weaved between cars. Life went on, indifferent. But for Marcus, everything had stopped that morning at Rosie's diner. He had a son. A 3-year-old son he'd never held, never watched take his first steps, never heard call him Daddy. A son who grew up without him, who learned to speak with the help of an exhausted mother who did everything on her own. Marcus picked up his phone, typed Jasmine's name into social media. He found a simple profile with only a few photos. Most of them were of Elijah. Elijah at the playground, smiling. Elijah with a birthday cake, candles lit. Elijah dressed as a superhero on Halloween. Each photo was a stab to the chest. Marcus zoomed in on one image. Elijah was sitting on the floor playing with plastic cars. In the background, you could see the small apartment. Peeling walls, simple furniture, an old TV. Nothing luxurious, nothing easy. And Jasmine had done all of it alone. While he closed million-dollar deals in Tokyo, while he dined at Michelin-star restaurants in Paris, while he slept in 5-star hotel suites, she struggled to pay rent, to buy diapers. To make sure Elijah had the basics, Marcus tossed the phone onto the couch and ran his hands over his face. He had always been proud of his achievements, of coming from nothing and building an empire. But now, for the first time, he asked himself, at what cost? 3 days passed. Marcus went back to Rosie's diner every day. He sat at the same table, ordered coffee, watched from a distance. Jasmine ignored him, but he noticed she never asked him to leave. That was something. On the 4th day, she finally approached. Are you going to keep coming here every day? If I have to. Jasmine sighed and sat across from him, too tired to keep pretending he didn't exist. What do you want from me, Marcus? Really? I want to know my son. I want to be present. Present how? Showing up once in a while? Sending money and thinking that fixes it? Because I don't need your charity. I know you don't. But he deserves to have a father. And I want to be that father. Being a father isn't about what you want, Jasmine said, her voice steady. It's about what he needs. And what he needs is stability, consistency, not someone who's going to disappear the second there's a business trip. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. I know I ruined everything. I know I don't deserve your trust. But I promise you, Jasmine, if you give me this chance, I won't disappear. Not again. Promises are easy, Marcus. Then let me prove it. Not with words. With actions. Jasmine looked him straight in the eyes, searching for something. Sincerity, maybe. Or just confirmation that he was another man who talked big and did little. If I agree to this, she said slowly, it's not for you. It's for Elijah. Every child deserves to know their father. But the first time you hurt him, the first time you promise something and don't follow through, it's over. Understand? I understand. And one more thing, Jasmine continued, pulling her hand away. It won't be your way. It won't be on your schedule. I decide when, where, and how you see him, because I'm his mother, and I protect my son above everything. I respect that. Jasmine stood up, straightening her apron. Sunday, 3 p.m. There's a playground near here on Broad Street. We'll be there. I'll be there. And Marcus? She paused before walking away. Don't show up in a suit. Don't show up as a billionaire. Show up as someone who actually wants to play with a 3-year-old. She went back to work, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business. He wasn't calculating profit. He wasn't planning the next corporate move. He was thinking about what it would feel like to hold Elijah's hand, about what it would be like to hear his laugh up close, about what it would be like to be called Dad. And he realized that no $1 million contract, no industry award, no magazine cover was worth more than that. Sunday arrived under a clear blue sky and a sharp November wind. Classic Newark. Marcus woke up early, nervous in a way he'd never felt before any important meeting. He changed clothes 3 times until he finally chose simple jeans, comfortable sneakers, and a plain hoodie. No Swiss watch, no designer labels, just him. He got to the playground 15 minutes early. The place was modest. A few rusty swings, a faded plastic slide, a seesaw that squeaked with every movement. Kids ran everywhere, yelling and laughing, while parents talked on benches around the edges. Marcus sat on a bench off to the side, his hands sweating despite the cold. Right at 3 o'clock, he saw Jasmine arriving. She walked up, pushing Elijah in an old stroller. The boy wore a blue coat with a dinosaur hood and held a little red toy truck in his hands. Marcus stood up. Jasmine saw him and gave a small wave, guiding the stroller over to where he was. "Hi," Marcus said, his voice coming out shakier than he meant it to. "Hi," Jasmine replied. She crouched beside the stroller. "Elijah, this is Marcus. He's Mommy's friend. He's going to play with us today." Elijah stared at Marcus with big, curious eyes. He didn't say anything, just hugged the truck tighter to his chest. "Hi, Elijah," Marcus said, crouching down to his level. "That truck is really cool. Can I see it?" Elijah hesitated, glanced at his mom, and she nodded encouragingly. Slowly, he held the toy out to Marcus. Marcus took it carefully, like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Wow, it's red. Red is my favorite color. What's yours?" "Blue," Elijah answered softly, pointing at his coat. Marcus smiled. "Blue's pretty awesome, too." Jasmine lifted Elijah out of the stroller and set him on the ground. He immediately ran toward the slide, and Marcus looked at Jasmine, silently asking for permission. "Go," she said. "But easy." Marcus followed Elijah to the slide. The boy climbed the steps with effort, and Marcus stayed right behind him, ready to catch him if he needed it. When Elijah reached the top, he shouted, "Mommy, look! I'm looking, sweetheart. Go!" Elijah slid down laughing, and Marcus ran down to be there at the bottom when he landed. The boy plopped into the sand and lifted his arms. Again! They did it over and over. Then they went to the swings. Marcus pushed Elijah gently, and with every swing, the boy's laughter got louder. Higher! Higher! Not too high, Jasmine warned from the bench, though she was smiling. After an hour, Elijah was tired. Jasmine brought a juice box and cookies. The three of them sat in the grass, and Elijah ate while showing Marcus the toy truck, explaining in broken little words that it goes very, very fast. Marcus listened to every word like it was poetry. When the sun started to dip, Jasmine said it was time to go. Elijah was nearly asleep. Sweaty hair stuck to his forehead. "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice thick. "It was just an afternoon," Jasmine replied, putting Elijah back in the stroller. "For me, it was everything." She paused and looked at him. For the first time in days, there was something softer in her eyes. "We'll come back next week, same time." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. As they were almost leaving, Elijah turned his little head and waved. "Bye, Marcus." "Bye, buddy," Marcus answered, his voice cracking. He stayed there at the now quiet playground, watching Jasmine push the stroller down the sidewalk until they disappeared around the corner. And then, alone, Marcus sat on the bench and cried. He cried for the 3 years he lost. He cried for the life Jasmine had to build by herself. He cried for the son he almost never got to know. But he also cried out of gratitude, because there was still time, still a chance, still a way back, and he was going to walk every step of it. Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a father. Because in the end, Marcus Hale learned that the greatest wealth in the world wasn't in bank accounts, million-dollar deals, or skyscrapers with his name on them. It was in a simple Newark playground, in the laugh of a 3-year-old boy who finally called him by his name. Not all wealth is visible. Some of it only shows up when the past finds the courage to speak. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes that success is also owning who we are.